Welcome to Reanimated episode 170. I feel like we just hit a milestone every episode nowadays. Also, happy 5th anniversary of Reanimated, AJ. It was on the 14th,
Woo.
but I was out of town. But yeah, dude.
I know.
That's kind of crazy.
Pretty awesome talking to you for 5 years. It's, I have to say, I'm really happy about that.
170 divided by 5, not quite one a week. Not even close. But
well, I know, but still close.
hey,
close,
we've had
close.
some ups and downs, some hiccups in the road. That's not a saying. But here we are, H.A. Conrad on the East Coast. I'm Stuart. I'm on the West Coast, and we've continued to talk about zombies and vampires and stuff for 5 years. And if any of you have stuck around with us for that entire time, kudos, because it wasn't easy.
Yes, it was not.
We gonna be talking about Mom and Dad today. The Nicolas Cage, Selma Blair roller coaster. But before we get to that, we got a couple of news items, including some that are pretty exciting, or maybe cautiously optimistically exciting. First one, though, is a despicable sort of story that makes me wonder if Frank Darabont was right all along. This story from Skybound, which is like the parent company of Robert Kirkman's comic book, right? I'm pretty sure. They had an article about Lauren Cohan confirming that she's coming back to The Walking Dead for season 9, which, like, you have to unpack this in so many ways, this article.
Yep.
There was a chance that Lauren Cohan was not going to be on season 9 of The Walking Dead.
Yeah, and I do have to say that I was wondering about this because I did see that she was supposed to play the lead, and they mentioned that in this article in a new series that's coming out. So I was like, of course, thinking we were going to go a certain way, or I was like, how are they going to make that? Are they going to kill her off? And then this article also mentions that, I mean, she was in contract disputes, and it's sort of like, really? This show is still pulling in insane ratings. She especially is a very popular character. She's one of the originals that we've seen. She plays a pivotal role. I don't know. I don't even know why you're having a contract dispute. Give her what she wants. That's just crazy. And then they kind of soften it a little bit by saying, people want to do other things and that kind of thing, which you can understand. But to me, it doesn't sound like that's what this was about.
It sounds like it was about women not getting paid as much as men in Hollywood, or in this case, in Georgia.
Yep.
And the fact that Maggie has been a super popular character her entire run. Lauren Cohan is clearly an amazing actor. Like, no, there's no doubt.
Give her what she wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she should pay. I mean, there's no question. She should be paid equally. So glad to see that at least this kind of thing is coming to light, and I'm glad she's coming back, and I'm glad she got what she wanted. So, but there was a lot in this article.
For me, it came out of nowhere, you know?
I mean, I had seen that she was cast as the lead for this other thing, but, that's the thing, is that sometimes those projects go away pretty quickly because they just don't have legs. Sometimes they kind of wait to see how they go. But remember, with Sasha, we both were talking about, well, how's she going to handle both? And she wasn't.
Same,
I was just worried. I was having a little bit of deja vu there. But glad to see she's coming back, and so that's awesome. Next up, we have a trailer for The Passage, and wow,
it's more.
I'm.
This is more than a trailer. This is almost like I don't know.
Yep.
They show so much plot.
They show a lot of plot. A lot has changed from the books, and it feels a little forced to me. I don't know what your assessment was, but
yeah.
I think that the kid that plays Amy looks awesome. She looks pretty good, but even the interactions between the actors feels a little bit strange. And the whole sort of plot points that they're changing here doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why you would need to change the plot of the film. So, and what we're talking about is, obviously the Justin Cronin books, The Passage, and it's more of a vampire / epidemic kind of movie. It's got, a little bit of a contagion thing going on. But the whole sort of... so basically within this trailer, they're saying that they're releasing this dangerous virus because of another virus that's out there. At least that's what I got.
Yeah, that's what I picked up on too. But what's obviously they've the biggest glaring issue with this trailer is they need a girl because they want a young subject with no family, and then
Right.
in the trailer they're like, "All right, we found this girl," and then Zach Morris, what's that guy's name? His real name?
Zach Morris?
Is that his real name or is that his name on Saved by the Bell?
No, that is his name on Saved by the Bell. Isn't it Mark? Oh gosh.
Can we just call him
this is
Zach
terrible.
Morris for now? Because I don't want to.
No, this is terrible. Why can't I remember?
Just let me finish this point, and then we can come back and find out what his real name is. But Zach Morris then has a change of heart or a consciousness sort of shift, and he's like, "No, we can't possibly put this girl into harm's way." And then somehow she's the only young person they can find without a family.
Yeah.
And I just looked briefly at the comments on any of the articles that I've seen this appended to, and it's like, what, they only have one girl in the entire country that they can use for this? Like, that just is a glaring plot hole in a trailer. That's the problem with making your trailer too long and also editing it in this way to make it look
Right. And they've also had a lot of problems with this particular production from what you and I have talked about this a little bit, constant rewriting, re-editing, that kind of thing, and that never bodes well. Similarly, the Han Solo movie is going through that, or had gone through that too. So I will probably see it, but I'm not. I saw the trailers for it, and I had similar feelings about it. In this case, and so it's Mark Paul Gosselaar, who plays Zach Morris and plays this agent. I think, yeah, that was something that stood out because in the book, the whole point was that they were on a very specific time frame, so they were able to find that subject within a certain amount of time because something had popped up, and it was like time of the essence. They put a time crunch on. You're right, like this is just sort of strange in how this plays out in the trailer and doesn't make any sense.
considering how long the trailer is. I feel like they shot themselves in the foot by making a 5-minute trailer or whatever this thing is.
Yeah.
Just make it a 30-second to a minute and tease that out, because like they just introduced issues that they shouldn't, unless that's actually the plot, in which case I am not excited for this if they're really going to make it about
neither.
this one girl who for no reason has to be the girl.
Right. And I mean, the whole point about the virus in the book is that it was basically they were using it and hoping to use it for military purposes, and it went wrong and it got out. And that to me is a pretty easy plot to run with for a film. So I don't know why you complicate it.
And the girl,
with all this weirdness.
the girl has undergone some experimentation, which makes her unique. That's
Correct.
So either way, let's reread the book, and then we'll watch the show when it comes out. And it's going to be on Fox, which was another hilarious part of the comments that I was reading was everybody's
I know,
super
right?
salty at Fox right now for canceling Lucifer. So
Yep.
everybody was like, oh, yeah, it kind of looks interesting, but Fox is going to cancel it even if it's good.
Right.
Because Fox actually does have a pretty long track record going all the way back to Serenity for canceling good shows.
Yep.
Or Firefly, sorry, not Serenity.
There we are. So we'll to be continued on that point. But yes, you and I both had similar thoughts watching this lovely thing. And lastly, and this actually plays into what we'll be talking about next week, the film Cargo, the newly reimagined one with starring Martin Freeman. We've talked about it a few times on here. Is finally out, and it's getting some great reviews, but there's just a lot of press surrounding it. One of my favorite articles that came out was which emo zombie movie should you watch, which is on vulture.com. And it's a guide to emotional zombie dramas. So we'll put that in the show notes. And I look forward to watching this and reviewing it with you, Stuart. I mean, we both saw the short that this is based upon, which was moving, emotional, and pretty heavy. And so I'm curious to see if all the hype is going to be, I don't know, worth it in the end. So I can't wait to talk about this with you.
Yeah, for sure. We'll hit that up next time. Get a little Martin Freeman and some Australian Outback. Great combination. And zombies and babies, of course. One of HA's favorite things. And speaking of babies and zombies, Mom and Dad.
Yes, what we are reviewing this week. And This got some attention at some film festivals, and I like a good Nick Cage vehicle, and this is a pretty good one. So,
Yeah.
or at least it plays to his strengths. And so, are you ready to hop in?
Yeah. So this movie came out on January 19th of this year. It's already on streaming. I don't know that it did much time in the theaters at all. It was directed
Yeah.
by and written by, I think, Brian Taylor, and it made
Yep.
$170,000 in the box office. But now it's available on Amazon streaming and Hulu and a variety of other online sources.
Right. And if you know Brian Taylor, you may have heard of him. What I think his, I don't want to say like claim to fame, but he did this little cult film called Crank.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever see that?
Yep, you're not quickly going to forget Jason Statham banging Amy Smart in public. That scene, it was just
Yeah.
bizarre. Yeah.
It was very strange. Although that had a pretty big budget and actually made a pretty decent box office, but has a little bit of a like culty following and that kind of thing. He also was involved with Ghost Rider, which I think is probably the Nick Cage connection. So anyway, that just to give a sort of overall overview of this, where this is coming from. But it's got a pretty decent cast. I mean, in addition to Nick Cage, it has Selma Blair, got some interesting cameos.
Yeah, Bokeem Woodbine. What?
Yeah, right.
What the hell? I mean,
You
maybe
got
he's
him.
not famous, but I see him and I'm like, dude, that's Bokeem Woodbine. What the hell? He's doing a cameo?
Right.
I was like, oh, his
We got
character's going to have to show up later. No. What? Sorry, who else?
Yeah, right. Well, Lance Henriksen.
Oh, yeah,
which,
amazing. Amazing.
that was pretty awesome. Yeah. So yeah, like there's just a good. I think it's a pretty well suited cast, and the production value is decent.
Yeah. And honestly, the greatest thing about this cast is Selma Blair and Nick Cage scenes together, and they do a great job.
Right.
And Nick Cage is really just Nick Caging all over the place.
Oh, totally.
But
Yep.
Selma Blair, somehow, who you don't think of as and she's not really a big actor. She does a great job of matching his intensity.
True. And also with the kids, we've got Anne Christine Winters, which I think she's probably best known at this point for 13 Reasons Why, which is the Netflix series. And then I don't think that I know the little kid, but he's on Transparent.
He did a good
So-
job too.
Yep, and he was pretty good. So overall, strong cast. And this, I would say, I think you have to have a specific appreciation or sense of humor for this. It's definitely very dark, and there's a lot of graphic stuff going on here, although not as much as I think they show. There's a lot of blood splashing and stuff off camera, but I would like to hear, since I'm not a parent, how you felt about it, Stuart.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it was difficult. It was challenging. And also, it touched some nerves because, yeah, sometimes you don't want to ever hurt your children. But sometimes you are driven to this brink of rage that you don't know why you have that inside of yourself. It's
Right.
That's just part of being a parent. When you're getting kicked and punched every day over something as trivial as like, let's brush your teeth, you're like, why? Why does this have to happen?
And I think they do a good job at like playing into those
Yes,
things
definitely.
and feelings here.
The-
Obviously exaggerated and obviously not. But this is just the whole vehicle for this movie. The whole plot point is that all the parents are affected by this strange. I think I don't know that you would call it like a. It is sort of a weapon. That's kind of what they talk about.
They try to make
in
it sound like
various,
that.
Yeah. But it's like they are affected by this static, almost like.
It's definitely like The Signal, which we have not yet seen.
Yeah, that I was about to say. It's so kind of like The Signal, and parents are basically their protective instincts are twisted so that instead of protecting their young, they're going after them. And this takes a few different twists in this particular film, but the frustrations and there's definitely some moments and some scenes with Selma Blair's character and Nick Cage's character just talking about, I think that there's a lot of transitions that happen not just for parents but just as you're growing older, and things that happen as you're growing older and feeling like you're becoming less yourself.
I was trying to think while watching this,
and also less visible, I guess, because that's something that's true, I think.
While I was watching this, I was trying to be like, well, okay, whose perspective is this really like championing? Is it like because there's a part in the classroom where the teacher's like, there is this thing called planned obsolescence, and you're not sure if you're supposed to take away from that like the next generation is always the better one, and we should always want to be the next generation, like meaning like that the kids will inherit the earth kind of storyline, or is it? And as the movie goes on, I feel like we get much more the Nick Cage, Selma Blair perspective, which is like, we used to be amazing golden gods, and now we're disappointed with the choices and where we've ended up in life. And I totally don't understand that, because Nick Cage is all mopey about not being able to have a pool table when he's married to Selma Blair, lives in a McMansion, has a housekeeper, and a job where he can just sleep on his desk. I don't know. It seems okay.
Right.
It seems okay.
Well, but I think it's also, look, youth thinks that they are just invincible, that everything's going to turn out into this different way. But I think it's also the expectation about what those things are going to look like.
Right.
And, I think in our society, we obviously value the young more than we do the old. And as people get older, and we've seen this just in how things have been playing out, especially like, I mean, right now, if you just look at like news reports about, and this is somewhat an economic issue and things like that, but like, for example, boomers don't want to retire right now, and they do not want to pass down the reins to the younger folks. So like younger generations of people are kind of getting stuck and feel resentful. And then you have, but in some ways this is the reason why this is happening, is because, we don't, at least here in the U.S., I mean, we don't have universal health care. We don't have a lot of stuff. So people are just kind of hanging on. But I also think that there's a piece of this where it's like, oh, everybody has this sort of fairy tale idea about what marriage is like, what careers are going to be like, what having children is going to be like, and none of that really resembles what you ever think it's going to be. But I kind of think that's the way for everything in life, right? You always think, oh, this is going to be a certain way, and then as you experience it, absolutely not. So I think this is playing into some of those things and does it pretty well.
I think so too. I agree. I think that it's the message, although it's like complicated, it's told from several perspectives in easily understandable ways. Nick Cage may be less understandable sometimes, but he at least tries, and he acts it out through sledgehammering fairly well.
Right, but then you also have some interesting scenes where there's things where people are hanging on to stuff from their youth. So in his case, he's got the car, and you think you understand it in one way, and then you see a flashback scene and understand it in a very different way. And this is, there's a whole scene between him and his son where his son has, like, I don't know, left weird baby birds in there and they've died. And this car is like the symbol of his youth, where he used to like basically have sex with his girlfriend or something in the car, as he did, like tailspins and stuff like that. And then as it turned out, he did that, but this was his dad's car, and his dad basically made him buy it back from him and had some understanding. So and in this case, he understands what his son did and sort of forgives him. So it's interesting to see these different layers within a horror film.
Well, this isn't a horror film, though, really. I did read a review on AV Club, and they're like, yeah, this isn't supposed to be a horror film because Mountain Dew commercials aren't scary. And that's when it comes back to the Brian Taylor effect, the crank effect of lots of shortcuts, the jukebox sort of soundtrack, and even the opening credits, which are just like a Bond film. Like, there's nothing about this movie that has the tone of a horror film, other than the content, which is horrible. That's not a word.
Horrible.
It's horrible. I mean, even the cold open is a woman murdering her baby. And there's a lot of
Yep.
baby murdering going on, or attempted baby murdering going on in this
Yeah.
movie, and that is obviously very difficult. But this isn't a horror film; it's a dark comedy, a black comedy, and it really hits its stride with the black comedy once Nick Cage and Selma Blair are teamed up in their efforts to murder their children. Probably 2/3, like the second and third act of this movie, succeed. Where I'm like, no, the third act is always a failure. It's because they almost end the movie during the second act, and it really works. It really works all the way to the end.
They do a great job just of playing this out. I agree with you. I was like, wow, they did a fantastic job in this last act. I think that from like the editing and the storytelling in this was excellent, and it falls down in a couple of spots, but not that many spots, and enough that it's still like it holds together enough that it's still enjoyable. And I think because of they have these moments that are much deeper in these interactions, it just makes it a much more successful film. And especially the acting between Nick Cage and Selma Blair, these moments of understanding between them and in these little flashback segments just really makes the film. And then you see them teaming up, in a similar way to try to off their own children. So it's really, I enjoyed it, even though I was absolutely disturbed by it. So there's definitely parts where I'm like, I feel kind of bad for enjoying this, but I think that they did a good job.
Yeah. So the first 20 minutes of this movie are basically just setting up reasons why they might want to kill their children, because their daughter is really unpleasant.
Well, but it's also kind of like everyday kid stuff, just exaggerated to some extent.
Is.
It's like
I don't know. Did you ever
teenage things.
Did you ever steal $100 out of your mom's purse?
I did not, but I don't think I was a typical teenager other than being really like moody and depressed and that kind of stuff. I was very mean to my mother though. So some of the like conversations that she and her mom have in the car, where she's like, doesn't understand, like when you're a teenager, you're so self-centered, it's very hard to see outside of yourself, and you definitely don't view your parents as people. So yeah, there was, I think they did a good job with that piece of it. But they do exaggerate her. I mean, she's doing drugs. She's doing all sorts of stuff.
But she wakes up pretty quickly and becomes, what's her brother's name? I forget.
Josh.
She turns into the caretaker for young Joshua pretty quickly, and that's a good. They transitioned that very quickly. We don't have to like wait around to see if she's going to pick up that mantle. She does it right away, which is good. There are so many points in this movie where I was laughing out loud, like when it turns out that Joshua has the gun in the basement.
Oh, I know. It's like, oh my gosh.
Nick Cage getting blown up. Lance Hendrickson showing up, and then you're like, oh, is this going to go the way I think it is? And then it totally goes the way you think it's going to go. So there were a couple of odd bits in this. Like, usually parents only wanted to kill their children and nobody else, but there were some exceptions, right? Or they would hurt somebody else to get to their child.
Well, I think if that person was interfering, they would go for that person in order to remove the obstacle.
Yeah, and probably the guy who got the worst of that is young Damon, right? What's her name? Oh God, the daughter's name is
Carly.
Carly's boyfriend Damon, who is just like a really nice kid. He's like working on his PSATs. He's doing practice tests. He has to take out his own dad, although does it accidentally pretty early on in the film. I thought he was dead 3 different times.
I know. He's the guy that keeps coming back. It almost was a zombie film in that way.
Yeah. The time he got hit with the meat tenderizer and then bounced off the banister on the way down to the first floor, I was like, oh, that's it for him. He's done. And he'd already gotten a coat hanger through the face and some kind of open palm karate move by Nick Cage onto the tile floor before that. Like, this kid should have 6 concussions, but I love the fact that he kept coming back.
Right. And he also had some pretty good lines, and I thought his acting was good. I also liked that part of why he survived against his dad was because this was not new behavior, so it
Right.
wasn't totally out of character.
Yeah.
Though obviously it was a little more intense than I guess probably would usually happen. So he was basically saved because this was something unfortunately that he had dealt with before.
And as he says later, he's like, I thought my parents getting divorced was the worst thing that could have happened, but honestly, it doubled my chances of survival.
Yes.
It was bad timing for them to be making those jokes because Selma Blair was just in the closet preparing another weapon, but it was still they had a couple of funny one-liners in that scene.
Yep. And then we've got you know, and this was just clever how they alluded to it, but the appearance of Lance Henriksen, and it's Maureen Dodds Frank, I think, or Marilyn Dodds Frank rather. Both show up, and they are Nick Cage's parents in this film. And they've alluded to this earlier in this. They mentioned that they're supposed to come for dinner, but I definitely forgot about this part until the doorbell rang. And basically, it's interesting because it's like the way that the parents interact in this, like in their plans to kill the children, they pivot from their plans to kill the children to being sort of normal about other stuff. As long as it doesn't involve their children, it's sort of like commonplace things, or like, so they're annoyed that they now have to deal with like their parents showing up. But it's like this weird little annoyance. It's like, oh, well, we were just so focused on killing our children. Like they make it a very normal, everyday thing, which I thought was very clever.
Yeah. Where that can tend to go off the rails is like in situations where they find the housekeeper's daughter in the trash can, Lisa.
Ooh.
Like, why aren't they reacting to that? I guess it's just the part of this that seems derailed for me is they're not only focused on killing their own children, they're also okay with other children being killed, except in the case of the newborn baby, where Selma Blair tries to save that child.
Right.
So I was a little confused. It seemed like she wasn't infected almost.
Right. I think that they tried to sort of explain that with the interview with what is his name? I cannot remember the actor, but they have they kind of they have little TV interviews to give you some explanation and context for some of this, and so you can figure out what's going on in the outside world as like overall what's happening. So they're talking to him, and he's saying that he is bothered, but he doesn't show it. And I think that's a little bit how they tried to write off some of these non-reactions.
Yeah. But
I don't think overall it was completely successful.
That was Bokeem Woodbine.
Yes, Bokeem Woodbine. Sorry. So, so it's spotty in a couple of places. But then, but with, as you said, with the entrance in I guess it's the end of the second act, or would you say it's the beginning of the third act with Lance?
I feel like this is just a 2-act movie where the second act is just constant mayhem. But when Lance Hendrickson shows up, you mean?
It just stabs Nick Cage.
And his mom maces him in the face, and then his dad stabs him.
Yeah. And so that whole, and the action scenes in this, and just the music and everything that goes on is amazing.
Yeah.
So I thought that this was excellent, and Lance Henriksen's awesome. And just having him and Nick Cage doing their thing with each other, amazing.
Yeah. Those scenes are all. I mean, everything that happens in the house towards in the second half of the movie is really powerful. But also another really powerful set of scenes are when all this is all breaking out. Minute 22 of the film, when like class gets disrupted, and suddenly we have this weird standoff between the teachers and the police and the parents and the students.
Right.
Where teachers and police are trying to keep the students away from the parents. Minute 22, there are already people in authority who know what's happening, or don't really, but they know that they're in danger, and they're trying to keep the parents away from the kids. And then that scene where everything kind of breaks down, the one kid jumps over the car key thing. And then
that was like
the chase across the athletic field and individual scenes of parents doing terrible things to their children. It's horrible. Like I'm like curling up and like covering my face as I'm watching this.
Yeah,
but
it was pretty rough.
It really gets you in that mindset of like, oh geez. And then, unfortunately, some people just don't really pick up on it, and that's the horror movie trope of Riley, who's like still kind of laughing it off when they get to her house, and she's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna smoke a J," and then you're like, "Okay, well, you broke the rule."
Yep.
Either way, the movie, I think both of us are really on board with this. I think we both had a lot of, maybe not fun, but it was a good film.
Yeah, and I see why people were like, "Oh, okay, this is like an interesting thing." And again, like not for everybody, and definitely very dark. And so there's certain themes in here that I think would be hard for some people to watch.
Yeah. It's getting 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a high score, high compared with a lot of stuff that we've reviewed
high.
that we
Yep.
liked. The audience score is 39%, but what do they know?
True.
So, and then on IMDb, it's getting like 5.5 out of 10 stars. Still, I'd give this like a 7 out of 10 probably, or an 8.
Yeah.
I thought it was a lot of fun to watch, and it's short, it's punchy, and I think those are the strengths that Brian Taylor brings, are that energy, you know.
Yeah, and it's also very clear to me that the cast was having a really good time doing this.
Well, I hope so.
and
I
in
hope they had
fact-
counselors for that little kid.
Yeah, I know, right? Poor Josh. But Nick Cage actually had said in a couple of interviews that this was like his favorite movie in years that he had done. So I thought that was kind of funny. And I liked that he had such a good time doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I'm right there with you. I'd say 7 or 8 as well. And I didn't expect to like it as much as I did.
No, me neither.
And it was a nice surprise. So yeah, I definitely recommend it.
It's a bit of a brief review, but we'll let you go and see the rest of it. It's got some great set pieces. It's got some funny jokes and some good action. Poor Damon, I hope he had a stunt double.
I know.
And yeah, I guess next time we're going to be talking about Cargo, which will probably be less of a laugh romp.
Yeah, I don't think this will be quite as lighthearted in terms of our discussion. But yeah, I am looking forward to watching this and reviewing it with you.
It'll be similarly parent and zombie themed.
I was about to say it plays right into this whole theme going on. But if you have any comments about Mom and Dad and would like to leave us a note, tweet at us, which is Reanimated PCast on the Twitters, and you can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or leave a note on our site, reanimatedpodcast.com.
Indeed.
Stole my line. But until our Cargo review, have a good week, and ciao.
Thanks for listening. Ciao. Oh, wait, you said ciao. Bye-bye.
You can say ciao. Double ciao to you.